the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Man, I'm, again, pleased to be able to call a good friend. He's Sean Payton back here on the show. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing well, Rich. Thanks for having me on today.
You bet. Look, man, and I always do start an interview like, how you doing? But literally with you, that is the first thing I got to start with. How are you feeling? How are you doing, Coach?
I'm feeling well. I'm 100%. It's been more than 2 weeks now. I was cleared meaning, I guess, non-contagious and recovered about 6 days ago. And for me, the experience was the first couple days or 3 days of symptoms were the chills, the aches, all the things that we would normally associate with a normal flu. I had a fever on the first day, and the first day I got tested was when I had a fever and the chills. The test results took a while. It was 4 days before I got the results back. And I'm kind of fortunate to be in that group of that 95% group that had it, recovered from it, and now can't get it or can't give it. And so, yeah, I would say probably the last 6 or 7 days I felt really good. I went out, got a chance to get a 3-mile run in the other day.
That's great.
And I'm blessed. But we're back into our draft meetings. They began today, and obviously none of the facilities are open for business. So we are at the Dixie Brewing Company in New Orleans East, and our meetings are being held here. There's a conference room. Our scouts are all teleconferencing, Skyping in. There's probably maybe 5 or 6 of us in the meeting itself, Mickey, myself, Jeff Ireland, and we're getting up to speed with technology, and it's going fairly smooth so far.
Okay, so there's a little bit to unpack based on what you just said right there, Coach. So first things first, did the doctors who have been administering care to you tell you that they believe you can't give it and get it again? Is that the diagnosis
I think
you received?
That's the understanding. There's a lot of unknown, but they're confident that I can't give it or I'm contagious now. There's a process, and I forget the word they used. Generally speaking, the 48 hours, call it 4 or 5 days, 3 days, 2 days prior to you having symptoms are your most contagious days to others. It would be too hard for me to try to guess where I received it. I spent a week in New York. I was down in Florida for a couple days and then back in New Orleans, and it was that Monday, 2 weeks ago, this past Monday, that I first had symptoms. They are doing some research, and I've inquired, and I think they're looking at ways to take blood from those people that have built up an immune system then towards it, and whether it's through a plasma transfer or a blood transfusion. So I'm kind of waiting to hear on that to see if I can give blood and if it can help. But no, it was for me, my symptoms were very similar to what I would have known as the flu. I didn't have the respiratory challenges that so many of the patients or the people that have right now and are struggling with it.
Okay, and now to the task at hand of I guess creating your own draft room outside of the normal Saints facility that is shut down because of what is going on in the state of Louisiana, which seems to get more and more stark every day. So you have set up shop in a brewing company in New Orleans and trying to IT it up to the point where you're going to have your own draft room. This is from where you will conduct the draft on April 23rd through the 25th, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Our owners, Mr. B, when he was alive, and Gail Benson bought Dixie Brewery a few years ago and built this brand new facility in New Orleans East. So it's away from everything. You really have to find it. And there's a conference room in here. There's a restaurant in here. It's closed. And yet the facility relative to what we're looking for is fantastic. You don't see anyone. You're not around any populace at all. I mean, the parking lot's empty. You've got to drive a little bit to get here. Everything's clean and new. There is a chef here that'll cater in the meals, and today was our first day. Every team in the league right now is in this month going to have 2.5 weeks of draft meetings to we have a board that's already stacked, but you're going to gather the information since the combine, the workouts, which few there were, and begin to create your final board. And so we'll operate from here. And we're in our first day of meetings. They began today, this morning.
Sean Payton here on the Rich Eisen Show. Mickey Loomis's comments on Peter King's podcast are certainly resonating. Is this still something that, would you say, you're in the competition committee, you're in your own situation, and you're in contact, I'm sure, with colleagues throughout the NFL. Is this still the prevailing thought amongst those in management in the NFL, and certainly at the team level, that this draft is something that should be delayed, Coach?
Well, look, I know I had a chance to listen to Mickey's and read his interview, and I guarantee you many feel that that's the case. And then shortly thereafter, it was announced that, hey, the league is going to have this draft at the end of the month. And from a logistics standpoint, I think we'll be able to handle, the challenge that present itself. That won't be too difficult. I think the argument, and certainly the bigger scope of things, was just relative to everything that's going on outside of us, depending on where you're living. But this is going to be a tough month here for New Orleans, particularly Louisiana, and so we're focused on the things we can control, and that's setting up a structure here in a meeting schedule that's going to be safe for our staff. We have a few coaches maybe or personnel people that have pre-existing conditions, Rich. They'll certainly be conferenced in. They won't be present, and that might be someone that has diabetes. That might be someone that has any one of these health issues that puts them at a greater risk. We really, the meeting I had with the staff started with, first and foremost, taking care of your families and being safe. All this other stuff here really, it just kind of puts things in perspective, as you would say.
Sean Payton here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get to the business of the Saints, if you don't mind. When I heard that Drew Brees was thinking about coming back, I had the thought, being again, I'm not in the building, just as a fan, I'm like, of course he's going to come back. Was it more dicey than perhaps people thought about him coming back and playing, Coach?
I don't know. Dicey wasn't the word that I would use, and yet, but it's a great question, because there's so much we just assume and we take for granted, and all of a sudden we're sitting here in 14 years, he's 15 years in, and we've been here quite a while. And I think that each year there's aside from just the physical drain, there's an emotional, mental drain and strain, especially at that position, and also all the things that take place relative to your family and your personal life. And so I think when the season ended, he wanted to spend time thinking through this decision. And look, to his credit, it's how he handles everything that he does. It's well thought out. It's well planned. And I think there was a period where he went to the Pro Bowl and he was back in San Diego. And, I'd shoot him a text. I didn't want to try to convince him one way or another. I think it was best that he was around his family and close friends to make this decision. And periodically something would come up, and then I gave him this one text, reason number 27. I said, the only team we haven't beaten together is the Denver Broncos, and we play them this year. That was reason number 27.
Right.
So, yeah, I think he got to a point where he felt comfortable with what he wanted to do. I know he had a handful of other options relative to television or business, and I think when the dust settled, his gut definitely said, I want to play.
And then, obviously, I know you mentioned when you were on ESPN yesterday about, do you think that Taysom Hill and having him in the fold, and You mentioned, do you think this could be Brees' final season? I mean, did you get a sense
I think
on
it could be. I think I also opened up a can of worms yesterday on ESPN because the way I said it, I think was in such a way where I just, hey, he's back for his final year, and then it was like, wait a minute, you're telling me the Who is going to stop concert touring after this season? And then I'm like, well, I don't know if I meant it that way. I meant just like he's back, and this could be his final year.
Right.
I don't know for sure. I know we feel confident in Taysom's ability. Those two are very close. We'll have a role clearly for Taysom this season as we head into the year. We have to have another quarterback. When we decide to play Taysom like we do in a game, it's important that there's a third on the sideline. So, with what he does, he being Taysom, at any time he could have a finger injury, a hand injury that would prohibit him from being a quarterback for that game. And so that was one of the challenges last year when Drew got hurt and Teddy went in to start. We kind of lost a player and a half. We lost Drew, of course, as a quarterback, and then now Taysom truly was the two, and yet we had to be careful on how many snaps we gave him outside of the game, whether it was in the kicking game or on offense.
And we had Emmanuel Sanders on yesterday, and I told you I love that signing. I just love that guy, and you're going to pair him with Michael Thomas, and put him in that same room with Michael Thomas to learn as if the kid is a sponge.
Yeah,
and we've seen
absolutely.
what he's doing.
The thing that we talk a lot about when we sign a player, or what we're doing right now in the draft, is at the very end of an evaluation, we'll say, what's the vision for this player? And it might be a backup quarterback, it might be a receiver, and clearly the vision for Emmanuel's clear. He'll come in, he'll play Z. He's someone that can play inside in the slot if we choose. The vision is crystal clear, and when you have a clear vision for a player, generally speaking, that's a positive relative to predicting success. And I think he'll come in. I've heard nothing but great things about his work ethic and his attention to detail, and that was a good plus for us. And a little bit, I don't want to say unexpected, but that first wave or first day or so of free agency, we spent a lot of time focused on our own players. And down here they would say it's a little lagniappe, maybe.
Well, he did say that he didn't want to go to Green Bay because it was cold weather. I think he was kind of being serious, but he also obviously wanted to play with Drew Brees, and he said that he wanted a 2-year contract to match up with Drew. And and in terms of running it back too, Coach, Malcolm Jenkins back in the fold right there. That had to be a nice nostalgic signing, but also somebody that that knows your program to bring him back in the mix.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you look back and you just hope you don't have a lot of these, but he's one that got out of the building that hindsight we wouldn't have played it out the same way. There's so many things about him that reek of what we're looking for. He's got tremendous football makeup. He's a tremendous human being. He's a great teammate. He's extremely smart. His work week is very thorough and detailed. I know the fans in Philly and anybody around him in Philadelphia, he grows on you right away. He was a rookie when we won the Super Bowl in 2009. He played nickel for us and came in and contributed right away. He's still playing at a very high level. And he's a guy that's very versatile, so you see him at strong safety, but you see him down in the box closer to the line of scrimmage, maybe more than deeper away. We're excited to have him back. Before
I let you go, Coach, put your, if you don't mind, your competition committee hat on. And where does the status of pass interference being reviewable stand as we currently converse?
It's a great question. We meet again Saturday, Rich, on a conference call. And honestly, I don't know that in the last 2 weeks anyone's even thought about it. It went from being like an off-season priority to with everything else that's gone on.
Right.
I know there'll be some changes relative to personnel, the officiating, the crew chiefs, all of that we're looking at closely. And Troy and Roger and the people back in New York have already begun to make some changes and take some steps to move us forward. I think in lieu of what's happened, our normal owners meeting and competition committee week of meetings was really condensed into some of these teleconference meetings now. So I think that the biggest thing that everyone screams for is, how do we become more and more consistent in any phase of officiating, but how do we get more consistent relative to what's being overturned when it goes back to New York? And I think that is going to be really the main focus as we meet this Saturday and in the weeks to come.
And will the draft be on the competition committee conversation?
That doesn't fall on us.
Okay.
I think the powers to be, and that's above our pay grade.
Right.
I think that's full speed ahead right now, the way I understand it, and we're preparing accordingly.
Okay. Tom Brady's in your division. I don't know if you missed that. He's now in your division twice.
Yeah, he is. We exchanged a few texts.
Is that right?
Gotten to know him over the years. Here's the thing that someone asked me yesterday, your thoughts about him coming to the division. It's first, playing a talented player like that, the skill set he has twice a year. But I would say even more importantly, it's what he brings to the program, any program, and in this case, Tampa Bay. That's the thing that's more concerning, because the standard or the bar or whatever term you want to use will be elevated when you insert a player like him. As fantastic as he is, he also makes others around him better. And so that's the thing that obviously makes it a great sign for Tampa Bay.
I mean, to be the guy to be in Brees' ear in a game where he's going to be facing Brady twice. I mean, you're that I'm sure gets your competitive juices going too, along with Drew.
Let's keep the cannons quiet, Rich.
I love it. Keep the cannons quiet. Oh man, and Bridgewater's in the division too, Sean. That's amazing. I mean,
what did Carolina? I'm thrilled for him.
I mean, it's amazing.
We've communicated a little bit. Man, what a great story, and another great person. Just having a chance to be around him. We had one of the better quarterback rooms that you could ever,
I bet,
envision with Drew and Teddy and Taysom. Those guys were outstanding together. They got along. They all have a good sense of humor. And, they can all laugh at themselves. And I think that's an important trait in any industry, that humility, if you will, to make fun of yourself and yet still be confident. But Teddy's going to have that opportunity in Carolina. And listen, I'm thrilled for him. And again, it's kind of that double-edged sword where you're excited for him. You just wish it was in another division.
I bet. Last one for you. Have you checked on Parcells? How Bill is doing?
I have. In fact, I heard you guys chatting before I got on about the horse racing. That's the one sport that's still going. And,
right.
He's got a few of these horses, and he's an avid horseman where, he's paying attention. And the other day we were just sitting around. It was Saturday. It was the Florida Derby was up. So this month has always been a month of qualifying races for the Kentucky Derby.
Right.
An important month. And we put the Florida Derby on, and you can get on a betting app and deposit money. And I hit the Superfecta, which is the first, second, third, fourth place horse, and the trifecta for like $6,400. I had to call Bill. I was so excited.
What'd he say? What's that conversation like?
Listen, he wanted to know. But he wanted to know how I arrived at these horses, and then what was the bet? And I kind of gave him the numbers, and he's like, "That a boy," he was excited. So he's back in Florida right now.
Okay.
I know he's taking care of his health.
Good.
And for anyone like Bill, and there's so many in our country, our parents, our uncles and aunts that are all, obviously concerned and focused on their health because they fall into that group that the numbers aren't so good for. And so he's paying attention to all of that. We speak pretty much weekly.
Okay. And then in the last minute, I give you the floor. What do you want people to know about the coronavirus, Sean?
We're watching it daily on TV, and it seems so simple, and yet when you get out in your car and you drive, but the first off, I don't know that anyone's explained flatten the curve and what that means. But the bottom line is, it's like any business. If the curve gets real steep, the hospitals can't handle all those people at the same time. So if we flatten it out, All right, if we flatten it out, they can handle that amount of people over a longer period of time. And so what we're afraid of is what's happened in New York and what's happening here in Louisiana and some of these hot spots is that the steepness of the curve can basically overcrowd the hospitals to the point where, hey, there's not enough equipment to care for everyone. So every one of us can be a part of this thing, the solution. And it's not, I don't want to say it's simple because obviously, man, we're stressed financially, we're stressed with groceries, we're stressed with jobs, and yet we have to stay in, we have to stay away, stay safe, and just recognize, how contagious this thing is. I mean, when you look at the numbers of, it's like times 10. And that's where we're at. This month is going to be a challenging month for our country, and I think we can help flatten that curve and then spread it out and give the hospitals, certainly those people that are working at the front of it all, the doctors, nurses, and all the people involved in it, man, our prayers go out to them.
Well, it's great to hear you. It's great to hear how well you are, and it's great to hear that you're investigating to see if your blood can be helpful to make sure that
Absolutely.
people get through all this. I hope you find some positive news on that front, and that you can also be a face-forward individual to get the word out on that
Absolutely.
important aspect of this, Sean.
Yep.
You take care of yourself, brother. Thanks for calling.
Rich, as always, thank you.
Right back at you. That's Sean Payton. That's a Super Bowl winning head coach from the New Orleans Saints.